Speaking of Russian, Triangulation popped up this week in the news. You like the segue
So
there?
much.
All right, let me get to it because we are an hour and 8 minutes in, and we're now getting to the big story, which is China's CERT publishes a document that accuses the United States National Security Agency of extended cyber attacks on this National Time Service Center. The claim is that American intelligence officials stole data and credentials dating back to 2022 to spy on staff and staff devices. We have talked in the past about Chinese. We're starting to see an emergence of Chinese reports outing Western and NSA type operations. So let me start at the very top. How reliable is this? What is the quality of the paper we've seen? And just at that level, is there something we believe that is accurate?
So it's very important to say that this paper published by the CERT is a perfect example of how you should not write reports. It's perfect because it's just such a big mess of things. It's like this ratatouille of whatever things they got their hands on without like fully understanding or explaining how they're connected. And then you drop this paper with all the IOCs obfuscated so that nobody can actually do anything useful with it, with this kind of accusation against the NSA, to which again it's not directly or anywhere nearly connected through strong attribution. Just a big mess in my opinion, and having seen papers from China before.
But here's the weird thing, Kostin, like this is a poorly written public part that looks like it's built on a very good private part, because when you look at all the like discussions of code homomorphism and like the IDA screenshots and the file names and like the module, they found the plugins, they found 20 modules loaded on top and different versions, and they have an IR timeline. Like at this, from this phase to this phase, they pulled these tools, and from that phase to the other one, they did this thing. Like that is, they have a sophisticated understanding of the operation and of the tools, and they've done the malware analysis, and it's not even just like one kid reversing some shit. Like they figured out where the code segments were like relating to other things. So like, I think Ryan's taken aback because you're looking at a post that I agree doesn't have any of what you need it to have to be a good threat intel report. Like I can't verify it. I don't have hashes. I can't go like double check any of the stuff. And I was excited because I'm like, oh, I love reversing equation group shit, you know, for you know, America #1, right? It's like that and Reagan, like some of the funnest shit you can reverse engineer, but you can't have any of that coming off of this. So it's not actually a report. It's just a public disclosure of an attack. And yet it has enough evidence and understanding in it that for once we can say the Chinese, that like this is, they're not lying. They're not making it up. There's a real report behind this with like top-notch threat intel work in it, but they're not sharing it with us. So what the fuck is actually going on?
And where is the top intel threat work coming from? So just to roll back, let's roll back a bit. And this paper talks about, so first of all, it talks about triangulation, and from there it jumps to something else, which they call the new DSZ, with DSZ meaning Denderspritz or Denderspritz, which is an evolution of the straight bizarre framework, one of these very sophisticated modular frameworks that appear in the Snowden paper and even later.
And the Shadow Brokers leaks.
And the Shadow, of course. There's actually a fully operational working framework in there that you can play with. What is cool here is, and I'm going to read actually what Boris Larin from Kaspersky wrote on X about this. He said, CERT confirms Operation Triangulation attacks on Chinese orgs and connects it to new DSZ, the implant we discovered and analyzed in 2023. And now I'm thinking about this a bit, and like where was this implant analyzed and mentioned? Because I have not heard this name before. For me, new DSZ is a new name. So I was like looking, what did I miss? Did they publish about it? Then? I was, yeah. I left in June 2023. So now it depends when it was discovered. I don't know when they discovered it in 2023, but nevertheless, I never heard this name before, new DSZ. And It sounds to me like Boris is kind of saying we found it first and they are using our name, meaning they somehow have access to this private information that would be available as a private report before.
And Boris did confirm that there is, publicly confirmed that there is a private report that mentions this.
Fantastic. So there is a private report about new DSZ.
And when we say private report, what does that mean, Kostin? It's in a database that is sold only to people who are willing to pay for it? I mean, is there like...
Correct.
What does a private report mean?
It means it's available to subscribers of Kaspersky's private intelligence reporting service, which I don't know, but I don't think that China is a customer. That's my supposition.
Oh, that's more interesting.
If they were a customer, then it would be weird for them to write about it. I mean, I don't know. And I'm not saying only this, but there's also further discussion about this topic on LinkedIn that people can find. I think there's a thread started by Pierre Delcheur, and there's other people commenting in there, which kind of speculates that the CNCERT got their hands on the Kaspersky private report and Yara rules, and they rediscovered this using that information. So they kind of found it using that information.
Is that plausible?
Fully plausible.
Absolutely.
I mean, 100% plausible. Kaspersky's discovery capabilities are, of course, legendary, and the Chinese discovery capabilities are not so legendary based on what we have seen so far. Nevertheless, they are there. So they did mention a couple of new things this year, if you remember. There was even like at Black Hat Asia, there was a presentation which talked about potentially a new Lambert-related implant and intrusion. So there's for sure discoveries, but like the name New DSZ is what makes this story special. The fact that they use that specific name kind of raises a question. Did they leverage the Kaspersky private intelligence to discovery? Did they get their hands on that report? Did they, I don't know,
that makes so much more
someone?
sense. It makes so much more sense. And I was saying this honestly with no like sneakiness. I hadn't seen the Boris report, but like we've talked in a sort of evaluative way about the Chinese threat intel capabilities, and we've always said there's got to be some really great shit. They for sure have some really great shit, and this would have, and we've seen things like Red Drip Team and so on, like release good reports, like good threat intel reports. So when you read this thing, it's not implausible that they did the work themselves, but like all of those discussions of like homomorphism, which I see it as like basically like I'm guessing it's my auto translate version of like code similarity. That to me immediately that raised a lot for me, because that's a piece of technology, that's a type of discovery and methodology that Kosin and I and people like Vicente Diaz and others obsessed over. Sergey Minev in particular did an unbelievable work with that stuff, and that was paying massive dividends. And it's something that I'll say I don't think the rest of the threat intel industry has really maximized or taken advantage of, or even properly tooled in a way that befits the opportunity and the capability. So when I see that, I go, holy shit. Are there people in China that are catching on to proper code similarity engines and like indexing these things? And that was notable to me. But when you mentioned that Boris is like tweeting about that, it makes it almost, to me, it makes it so much more certain that they're riding on whatever Kaspersky found and expertly analyzed rather than having done it themselves. I'm not saying they didn't find it themselves, they would have had to. I'm saying that like all that code similarity analysis and blah blah, if they did it themselves, I'd love to know, because I want to know the people that are working on this shit, and I want to know that technology lives on and that people are actually doing it the way they should have. Like I'm amazed that the threat intel side of things has not tooled that better and not used that more, when like we were making our own out of fucking scratch. You know, Vicente Diaz and I tried to make our own version. Kosin and Minev made their own version. Everybody was trying to like build these things. Google has their own internal capability. It's probably the only other like really, really good one that I know. But you're telling me that somebody looked at these pieces of equation of what were unknown malware at the time and had some mechanism by which to do code similarity and know immediately, like, this is related to this thing, this is related, this one function's related to this other piece of malware, you go, well, that's a pretty well developed library of stuff that you're working with, right? Like,
can I tell you something that gives me a rash a little bit? When I look at Pwn to Own, the list of Chinese researchers who are submitting the most exquisite exploit chains are all Chinese. When I look at the Microsoft leaderboard and I see the people submitting all these bugs and exploits, they're all Chinese. Right. When you see, when I read APT reports on Chinese adversaries, they're the most amazing things, doing all kinds of novel things. Yeah. And then in the same breath, you guys are telling me the people who are like looking at forensics and so on, they're shit, they have to copy here, their reports are crap, this is crap, this is crap, and it feels, I don't know, tell me what's going on in my head that this doesn't match.
Look, because I think I'm glad you're putting it this way so that we can add the right level of nuance to it. Because what we're saying, or at least what I'm saying, and I'm sure what Kosten's saying, is it's not that there aren't intelligent, technically ultra-capable people in China. There probably are more in China than anywhere else. And therefore, we look at the threat intel space in particular and marvel at its weirdnesses and differences. And one thing that I think I in particular need to emphasize, just from all of like my study of the threat intel space and everything I've ever discussed about the threat intel space broadly, is that the incentives, I think the incentives in China are very, very, very different. And it has developed a threat intel industry that is obviously homegrown and serving the interests of China and the Chinese ecosystem and Chinese companies. And that is not necessary, from the looks of it, it's not one that has rewarded the same level of public discussion, first of all. And second of all, it's also one that's insulated from the same level of sharing. So much of the threat intel space is we work with PwC, and PwC works with Proofpoint, and Proofpoint works with, CrowdStrike, and CrowdStrike works with Microsoft, and everybody's sharing because everybody has a slight different piece of the pie. So when you look at the Chinese ecosystem, obviously they will have shared with some, but are not getting the same level of sharing from everybody, and they have a different incentive in how they package and discuss these things, and they obviously have the CCP looking over their shoulder and saying, it is a good idea to publish this, it's not a good idea to publish this, and in many cases it's meant that just publishing was not happening, and now that's happening all the time, or actually, it's happening much more frequently when it comes to skewering the US government, whether well substantiated or not. But the important thing with this particular report is that what it shows is a level of very specific knowledge about a very specific group that not many other people have really dug into. I don't think that many people have dug into the equation group, even though it's truly notorious, even though it's unbelievably prolific and always at the edge of technology and sometimes 10 years ahead of other threat actors. I still think that many of the people in the US and in the West have never fully taken the time to just pull up these thousands of samples and like get steeped in it and say, how does this shit work, and reverse it and do code similarity and blah, blah, the way that we have and the way that Kaspersky has and the way that some very specific pockets of people have. So then to see a report like this that has historical knowledge and code similarity and everything tagged down to a function level, and they're able to take this thing and go, look, this is a new version because it connects in this tiny specific thing, it connects to here. In this tiny specific thing, this other module connects to this other thing over there. To me, it's not that China doesn't have smart people. It's that all of a sudden you're showing me this like encyclopedic historical knowledge of the equation group that is notable to find anywhere. If you showed me a French company that does this, I'd also be like, interesting stuff. So I'm not saying that they can't have done it, but it's notable that they're doing it. And when you tell me that it's possible that they didn't fucking do it, that who did it was Kaspersky, that is more plausible than we suddenly got some capability in China that has all of Kaspersky's level knowledge about equation group and is publishing this shit. That's all I'm saying.
Kosten, it is noticeable, though, that every time we talk about a Chinese report, we dwell on the quality of it, when it's quite obvious that they have the talent there. right? I mean, it's just noticeable to me, and a thing that gives me a rash. You wanted to make a point about something else?
Yes, sir. So just do not forget that the equivalent of CERT in the United States is CISA. So what you should be doing here is compare this report with CISA reports, and suddenly everything starts to make sense. So
Makes sense.
No.
yeah, just
So wait,
to put this out there.
just to close the loop on this, we do believe that the Chinese MSS found an NSA hack there that's linked to triangulation. We do believe that there's something.
Not the triangulation. Not the triangulation. Like, that was a weird fucking thing. Like, Kostin said, like, they mentioned triangulation and they jumped to this other thing. To me, like, the triangulation thing is a weird fucking out of nowhere mention that is based on, like, vibes-based attribution. Because what they should have said is this is an equation group related thing, and then there would be no objections from me whatsoever. You're showing me something related to Danderspritz. Danderspritz is beyond fucking attributed to some portion of the US government that is, you know, the equation group equivalent, and that's fine. I don't know where you get triangulation in that other than trying to say, you know, it's popular and believed to come from somewhere in that side of things. But that to me was like a, you know, that was a throwaway.
Just to drop something here, which is how these two could be connected, and then at least what the Chinese claim to be the case here. So if I wanted to go, let's say, after a certain company, doesn't matter, like whoever, the safest possible approach nowadays, you go after their system administrators. And this is like typically, there's even presentations in Snowden leaks which talk about hitting sysadmins. Like sysadmins at Belgacom, sysadmins pretty much everywhere. They hold the keys to the kingdom, which is the quote that I think I remember. So if you want to breach into something, you go after the sysadmins. And if you want to make this as silent as possible, you first compromise their phones, ideally their iPhones, and hope that they don't have the capability to spot that infection. And then you just wait. You wait for them to ask, like a colleague, hey, what's the password for that server? What was the router password? Like, here's a link to that sheet or whatever. Or here's an archive, even over Signal, which is amazing because they think that they communicate securely over Signal, but the attachment is on the phone. So it can be retrieved from the phone itself. And once you have that information, it becomes like a lot easier to get into that company in a silent manner. So this combination of mobile-driven attacks coupled or to facilitate intrusions into the company's network, like PC, whatever network and service, is a kind of state-of-the-art approach, in my opinion. And the same with going after the routers. Obviously, if you have router 0 days, you hit the routers and you just sit there and silently collect interesting information. You understand the company better, their infrastructure, and eventually you get your hands on credentials that allow you to pivot internally into something. So I don't know how this new DSZ was discovered into the first place, but it also raises the question if triangulation was just one side of that, and like the thing that Boris writes about on X when he says that we found in 2023, was it related and connected to that? Was it like the next stage of triangulation? I don't know. It's a question, I think, that is worth looking into, and how the two frameworks are, how one leads to the other, I think.
Well, triangulation didn't end when that disclosure happened, right? I mean, it must have gone on in new directions, right? I mean,
it might have not been just on mobile phones. That's the only thing I'm trying to say. You can sit on the mobile phones for years, sure thing, but eventually you might want to move laterally deeper with things such as new DSZ, dropping or running a paddle chip or equation vector or other kinds of backdoors that this framework knows how to run and deploy.